Hi there. Welcome to the first lesson on getting to know the coordinate grid. We're going to be talking about the coordinate plane and how we do graphing on those things. And this first lesson is just going to kind of be a get to know you. Uh, how does this look and how does it work and what can I do with it? Well, the first thing we're going to do is notice that there are two different number lines. Basically, the whole coordinate plane is made up of two number lines, and we've already dealt with number lines. So this should be kind of an interesting review for us. And then we're going to talk about how do we name the different pieces of it. And hopefully we can call this sort of a review where we can put different points on the coordinate grid without taking too much time. The first thing I want to do is kind of just look at it. If you look at the screen, and I know this is a little bit different, it's not on my whiteboard, which feels kind of weird because I'm used to just standing up there and dancing around and doing stuff on my whiteboard. But I like the screen share thing that I can do with you now because it helps me do things that are kind of hard to do up there. For instance, it would take me a long time and a whole lot of erasing to try to draw a coordinate grid every time I want to show you something with a coordinate grid. Or I could buy like stickers or something to put up there, but who knows if they're going to fall down in the middle of a lesson. Anyway, let's try this because I think being able to share my screen with you and show you things on this online whiteboard might be an easier way to get my points across with this. So if you look at the grid on the left side of your screen, you'll notice, and I'm going to pull out my little green arrow here, you'll notice that it has a horizontal number line, and we call that the x-axis, okay? And it also has a vertical up and down number line, kind of like we were talking about, I think, temperature, and we were talking about sea level and elevation. Up and down number line, and we call that the y-axis. All right, and that never changes. It's always that way. Horizontal is x, vertical is y, and when those two meet, we are able to do all kinds of stuff. We're able to actually find out where do we plot different points? Where do we find different things on this grid? The first thing I want to point out is 0. Notice that where these two axes meet, axes is plural for axis, where those two meet is called the origin, all right? It's a point where it's 0 on the x and 0 on the y, and that's just where they meet. That's where everything begins, okay? So if I wanted to say, okay, well, where is the point 0, 0? That would be the origin. That's where those two axes meet, okay? So what I'm going to do is the first thing I'm going to do is take my nice little blue star here next to O for origin. I'm going to put that right where those two meet. That first star right there is called the origin. Okay, you might want to write that down either next to, in your journal, next to the point 0, 0, or go ahead and write the word origin right there where that star is. That's a very important thing. We have to always know where we're starting from, right? Now, it's kind of interesting when those two axes meet. If you look at the grid, they basically cut this thing into 4 quadrants, 4 pieces. See how this is one piece, and this is another piece, and down here is another piece, and over here is another piece. We have 4 different quadrants. And it makes sense that they're called quadrants because quad means 4, right? So those two axes basically cut the whole coordinate plane into 4 quadrants. And it's kind of interesting because it kind of reminds me of a map. And you're actually going to see as we go through these lessons how this is basically just the way a map works. In fact, most maps are made with the coordinate grid in mind. And if you look at this, I'm going to share with you a Google map of a city that I used to live in, Albuquerque, New Mexico. And if you see, it has a freeway right here and a freeway going north-south. So we have a freeway going north-south and a freeway going east-west. And it basically cut that city into 4 quadrants. In fact, we had names for those quadrants. Up here, where it says Cleveland Middle School, where I used to teach, Chelsea Village Apartments, stuff like that, that was the northeast quadrant. So every address up there had an E attached to it because it's northeast. Over here was the northwest quadrant, southwest quadrant where downtown is, and then the southeast quadrant. So that kind of puts a picture in my mind. And there are other cities that look like that. But I want you to kind of think of the coordinate grid as a map because we're going to be telling we're going to be using math to move things around and to travel from one place to the next. And we're going to have a very distinct set of directions. And those are called coordinate points. Now, we already started with 1. That was 0, 0. That's where the origin is, okay? So if everywhere we drive to on this coordinate grid, on this map, is directions, we always start at the origin. Well, we don't always start. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. So let's look at this next point. Actually, let's go ahead and name these quadrants. See how I have Roman numerals here? Have you seen those before? Roman numerals are basically numbers that were used way back in the Roman days, and they aren't too hard to read. You can see how this I, it means 1. If you put 2 I's next to each other, that means 2. If you put 3 I's, that's 3. And then this one here is V, which means 5, but it has a 1 before it, so that means 4. And these are how we name the quadrants. Quadrant 1, interestingly, is in the top right. Okay, so there's quadrant 1. Quadrant 2 is to the left. We're basically going counterclockwise. And then quadrant 3 is down from there. And quadrant 4 is the one that's left over. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the other 4 points with stars next to them, and let's plot those points on our coordinate grid, and we'll just see where they are. This first point says 3, 6. Point A is 3, 6. What that is inside those parentheses, if you look at look above, that means X. In other words, where on the X-axis is that point going to be placed, and then Y, also where on the Y-axis is that going to be placed. So let me drag this star right here, and I'll kind of show you what I mean. If we start at the origin, right in the middle, and we say, okay, well, the first number is 3, and that's X direction, okay? That means we're going to move our star 3 spaces to the right, because it's positive, right? Now, the next number says 6, and that tells me the Y direction. So I have 2 choices. I can either go up or down. And since this is a positive 6, if you look at the Y-axis, positive 6 is up from there. So I've already gone my 3 spaces to the right, and now I'm going to go 6 spaces up. And right where those 2 meet, the 3 and the 6, that's where I'm going to drop this star. Okay? That's where the point 3, 6 is. With me so far? Let's look at B. B is a little bit different because the X direction is not to the right anymore. It's in the negative direction. So if I were to start at the origin and move -3, I would go this way. And I'll just kind of hang here for a minute because now I'm going to look at the Y. The Y is also positive 6. So that means up. So I'll follow the -3 line up until I get to -6 and boom. Right about there. Look at the difference between those two. Do you see how when I have 2 positive values, +3, +6, it landed me in quadrant 1. When the X value is negative and the Y is positive, it landed me in quadrant 2. How about when both are negative? Let's put the star at the origin. And now let's follow the directions. I'm going to go left 3, because that's the negative direction. And then the next set of directions tells me to go up or down. It's a -6. So I'm going to go down this time. Okay. So this star lands there. Quadrant 3. So this time I can see that if I have both negatives, if I have a negative X and a negative Y, my point is going to land somewhere in quadrant 3. If I have +3 and -6, this time if I start at the origin, I'm going to go in the positive direction for X until I get to 3. There's that. But then Y direction tells me to go down. So down to -6. There we go. Okay. Not too bad. Notice also, and we'll get into this a little bit later, that if I were to draw a line from each star to the next, I would basically make a rectangle. Okay. Because they're all the same numbers, they're just different signs. So you can kind of think of it as, well, they're kind of in the same location, they're just in different quadrants. Okay. Now, what if I told you to take A? I'm going to write this down so that I can kind of remember what I'm saying here. What if I were to tell you to take A, point A, it's at 3, 6, right? I want you to move point A -2 in the x direction and 4 in the y direction. I'm basically saying, okay, well, point A is in its place right now. It's in 3, 6. But what if I wanted you to move that? What if I said move it -2 in the x direction and 4 in the y direction? Well, basically, I can take this guy, and all I have to do is say, okay, let's start with x, and it wants us to move it -2. So that means 2 to the left, right? 1, 2. But I also want it to, it also wants me to go 4 in the y direction, and it's positive. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to the top. What is the new point? Where is that star now? Okay. Well, it's still in quadrant 1. So here's something I know I can say. I can say that both of those coordinates, x and y, are both going to be positive. Okay. So what is the new coordinate? What is the new point? Where is it in the x direction? What should I put in for the x value? Well, if you notice, it's hanging out right here. And if I follow this line all the way down to the x-axis, it's 1. So there's 1 for the x value. How about y? If I follow it this very short distance to the y-axis, I can see that it's 1 above 9, which means it's at 10. Okay? And it's still in quadrant 1. This is something that you will see on the exercise. I have quite a few exercise sheets underneath this, and they're links. One of them is going to ask you to tell us which quadrant each point is in. One is that going to give you kind of what I just did there, where it's going to say, here's a point, here are some directions, which quadrant is it in now? Okay. And I also am going to put in a cute little list of coordinate points where you can plot and play dot to dot, and it should give you a picture. All right. So go ahead and check out those exercises. I don't have any exercises. Well, yeah, I have one exercise of my own, and I'm going to go ahead and do a quick review video for that. So go ahead and check out the review video after you've checked my very short exercise sheet, and then check out the links to make sure that you're getting this. And the next lesson will build on this a little bit more. So I'll see you in the next lesson, and I'll see you in the exercise video.